Hey everyone, welcome to this session. My name is Vidyarthi. I'm so glad to be here on World Happiness Week. And I'm going to be talking to you today for about 20 minutes on technology for mindfulness and compassion. So let's get started. Take off my shades. Here we go. I got some slides for you. Okay, so my name is Vidyarthi, and this topic is basically my whole life. I design technologies for mindfulness and compassion. I'm also a mindfulness practitioner, and lately I've been dabbling in doing a little bit of teaching as well, which is scary, but also very, very fulfilling. And yeah, let's dive right in. I'm always open for messages, so please, if there's anything you want to learn more about, any questions you might have, please don't hesitate to send me a message. You can find my coordinates pretty easily online. Just Google my name. So when we think about technology for mindfulness and compassion, it's kind of like a weird thing, right? It's a weird topic because we often think like, what does technology have to do with mindfulness and compassion? Technology is the opposite of mindfulness and compassion, because we often think about technology like this, that we're developing, and then we turn into kind of these like automatons that are just addicted and we never move and we're stuck in our virtual realities. And that's certainly understandable given the direction smartphones and social media are going, and that we're kind of more and more hooked to our devices in some way. But this is also an example of technology, right? Painting and art supplies are all examples of technology. Musical instruments are technology, and of course the entire prospect of recording and listening to music. These are technologies that don't stress you out. Often they're technologies that calm us down, right? And even the kitchen is a great example of technology, where there's just so much high tech, from the plumbing all the way to the ovens and the mixers and the microwaves. Technology is a large umbrella, so we have to be a little bit more specific about what we mean when we say technology. And I wanted to start here so that we can kind of get on the same page about some of those reactionary concerns that people might have when they see this guy show up with his sunglasses ready to talk about technologies for mindfulness and compassion. So if you really look at the heart of it, technology is a very broad topic area. It basically means, based on some theory or science, to create something skillfully. It's sort of a craft or an art form of manifesting our ideas and sort of applying our ideas in the real world to create something, right? So there's technology everywhere. In fact, the way we're connecting right now is a lifeline of technology, especially in the pandemic that we've been facing, right? It'd be hard pressed to argue that the ability for us to continue working, continue connecting with people, even in lockdown, has not been an incredibly positive impact technology. Not to say there aren't negative impacts too, but we need to have a balanced perspective here. So here's how I think about it. Technology manifests its creators' values into the world. So whatever those values might be, we can manifest them into technology, and the technology can reflect, amplify, and expand those values. And it'll lead to both intended and unintended consequences. Sometimes it can kind of spin out of control. So if you look at the most popular websites, apps, and video games in the world, you can see a lot of our basic societal values being manifested, right? We value commerce, we value connection, we value organization and productivity, we value entertainment, we value pleasure. We're a capitalist society, we're a democratic society, and you can see all kinds of examples in our most used technologies that reflect these values quite clearly, right? But something interesting is happening in the world. I want to tell you a little story. About a half century ago, this young man named Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, a scientist in the Massachusetts Medical School, decided to create a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction, which was meditation for the healthcare system. And he is largely responsible for a lot of the scientific inquiry that's happened in the past 50 years. And you could argue played a major role in the fact that many institutions in our society are taking mindfulness seriously. And this video that you're watching, you can see he's quite a young man here, is basically him. I'll let you listen to it for a second. Oh, sorry, I missed it there. But anyway, it's basically John who's leading a meditation on a video that he put on the TVs of the hospital, so that when the patient's lying in bed with whatever horrible situation they might be facing, or bored of watching sports and sitcoms, might flip to this channel and have this young chap guide them on a meditation. And this was really important to normalize and expose patients. And it's a great early example of one of the progenitors of the modern evidence-based mindfulness movement using technology quite skillfully to help share the message. And of course, since Jon Kabat-Zinn's work, this is a graph of how many academic publications and journal articles and conference papers have been published on the topic of mindfulness. And we're seeing exponential growth in our evidence base, all the way to the point that we actually have a mechanistic understanding that's emerging of how this actually affects the brain. And not only do we start to see changes in the brain when you meditate, we can also see long-lasting traits, so long-term changes in the brain of people who actually spend a lot of time meditating, people who've meditated for years or even decades. And perhaps most interesting, we're also correlating those changes to positive impacts on symptomology related to anxiety and depression. We're seeing physiological impacts. We're seeing changes to relationships and pain and the immune system and even skin conditions and heart disease. And we're even starting to see, the positive psychology in terms of how mindfulness increases your sense of well-being and your psychological and mental health. So mindfulness is sort of expanding in our society as a result of this evidence base. And on the top left here, you can see the same gentleman, Jon Kabat-Zinn, decades later, leading a meditation with leaders of our society at the World Economic Forum. In the top right, you can see the Mindful Nation UK report put together by UK Parliament, which was sort of all about taking mindfulness seriously as an intervention in various sectors of society, from education, like you see in the bottom left, as well as healthcare, social work, and many other areas, productivity and business included as well. In the bottom right, you can see some of the local police in the Toronto area. This is the Peel Region Police Department, who are practicing mindfulness as a part of their training. So as Time called it, the mindful revolution. And of course, tech is no exception. As we've discussed, technology starts to reflect the values that we as a society put into it. So what does it look like when the values of mindfulness and compassion merge with our societal values and manifest as technology? Well, this journey started for me about 10, 11 years ago, before we had all these examples of mindfulness apps on our phones. That's me, a little bit more hair on my head, working on a sensory deprivation chamber where you can shape music with your breathing. And this was my first project. It was my academic work exploring how we might actually create technology with the values of mindfulness at the core, as opposed to organization and productivity entertainment. And since then, we've seen an explosion in really exciting technologies. And I've been lucky enough to have a front row seat to this development. So I started early in this area. So I got to see the dawn of mindfulness apps and wearables and everything that's happening in the future. And so what I want to do is I want to use the rest of our time together to take you kind of on a whirlwind tour of some of the coolest and most interesting and most thought-provoking and also the most impactful technologies that have come out in this space for mindfulness and compassion. So some of these technologies are people I know about. Some of them are things I'm just a big fan of. But there's three reasons why I'm doing this. One, I want to shift your perspective about technology. I want you to understand that, sure, you can say something like I'm addicted to technology, or technology is ruining society, or whatever it might be. And there are areas where that's true, but there's also areas where technology is extremely beautiful and actually transforming society in a wonderful way. And we need to get a little bit more nuanced. The second reason I want to talk about this is I'm super passionate about what these technologies can do in our lives, and I want all of you to try some of them. Some of these are things you can look up, you can watch YouTube videos about, you can actually download to your phone and play with. And so one of my, missions on this earth is to help people be more mindful and find a way to use technology to help amplify and have an exponential impact on people's well-being. And then the third reason is I know some of the people behind the technologies I'm going to talk to you about, and their work is amazing, and I think it deserves more attention, and I really want to profile some of that. So let's dive in, shall we? Just going to check on time. Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes left, so we're all good. So first, mindfulness apps. You probably have a mindfulness app on your phone already. What you may not know is that there's thousands, I think there's like 2,500 or more mindfulness apps that you can play with. And so there's a whole catalog there for you to look at and find something that works for you. I'm going to profile a few. Of course, Headspace is the one you may have heard of. It's one of the most popular. I think it's the most popular app, and it's really wonderful. It's an incredible introduction to mindfulness. Some accuse it of being kind of surface level, but those are people probably that have been meditating for years. And I think there is something to be said about having a very open-ended and inclusive approach to mindfulness that doesn't feel intimidating at all. And Headspace does an incredible job with that. This is the Waking Up app from Sam Harris, who's taken a very interesting approach to create a course and feature teachers of all kinds in his program. This is an app called Liberate, which is a mindfulness app that features teachers and content directly targeted at the BIPOC community, so Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And it's a really, speaking of inclusive, it's a really incredible example. And there are meditations on there that deal with things like generational trauma and other very, very relevant topics to people of certain walks of life. And so I think that's really, really an important thing. This is Bright Mind, which is a really wonderful targeted app based on the teachings of an American Zen teacher named Shinzen Young. We've also got the Healthy Minds program, which is coming out of a nonprofit related to the Center for Healthy Minds, which is one of the leading neuroscience institutions in the United States and in the world. So this is a really comprehensive and evidence-based program. Full disclosure, I'm a part of the team behind this one, and obviously I'm really passionate about it. This is the Calm app, which is another really, really, really well-known mindfulness app that has soundscapes as well as all kinds of programs that you can follow and great, great teachers. This is Insight Timer. So anyway, I could go on. There's a lot of really incredible mindfulness apps out there. Insight Timer is particularly interesting along with the Healthy Minds program in the sense that it's not a sort of capitalist business model. And so there's some really interesting case studies around how to use technology and not just turn it into a for-profit. So now let's move into our second category, wearables and biofeedback. So you may or may not have had some exposure to these, but we all know about our Fitbits and Apple Watches. Well, the Apple Watch has a breathing app on it, but there's actually a lot of sophisticated platforms in experimentation and development where you actually wear sensors on your body that allow you to track your biosignals aimed at developing your mental health, your well-being, and also targeting peak performance. So this is Aura, which is a handy dandy little ring that you wear on your finger. It's really amazing how much technology they packed into this piece of hardware. The main focus of the app and the sensors is to track your sleeping, which is definitely a big part of well-being and happiness. But there's also a mindfulness tool where you can track your heart rate and your beats per minute and your heart rate variability while you do meditation. So that feature, I believe, is called the Moment feature. Really interesting stuff. This is Muse. Full disclosure, a project that I was a huge part of, but this is a brain sensing headband that you wear on your head, and it actually tracks your brainwave. So it tracks the electric field of your brain to get a sense of your state of mind. And it uses that and provides real-time feedback to help you track your progress and, also get feedback in the moment while you're practicing mindfulness. So a really, really interesting case study in high technology and modern neuroscience applied not to organization and productivity, and not to entertainment. Well, that's kind of entertaining, but really focused on values like mindfulness and clarity, insight and introspection. So really, really cool example. This is Yume, which is coming out of Canada, founded by a technologist and an optometrist, a brother-sister pair. And it's actually a device that you put on your eyes for like 5-10 minute thermal meditation, they call it. It provides heat and vibration in your eyes, and it's designed to reduce the effects of screen time and ameliorate symptoms related to dry eye. So there's a lot more, again, in each of these categories. So there's a lot more wearables I didn't talk about, but just give you a kind of sense of what's out there. Now let's get into immersive experiences. So the oldest example of the immersive experience is probably the sensory deprivation tank. So this is a wonderful piece of technology. Some of you may have tried it, that actually just lets you float in saline water in complete darkness, sometimes listening to music, and really kind of relax your sensory input and give you space to explore your mind. So in the more modern era, we're starting to see VR applications aimed at meditation. And there's some really interesting ones. For example, this is guided meditation VR, which basically, guides you to these beautiful locales, for example, in Indonesia, and you're wearing the kind of headset in a VR and you're listening to a guided meditation in a beautiful setting. So that's the guided meditation VR concept. Next, we have another VR meditation. This is called Trip with 2 Ps. And if you look closely at the demo I'm showing here, you can see these little particles coming at you. You see the little sparkles, and now they're going out. And so it's actually measuring your breathing and giving you this kind of like energetic visualization of your breathing, along with guidance and beautiful kind of astral imagery. And actually, there's a number of experiences that are really interesting in immersing you into your own bodily sensations in this sort of aesthetic, beautiful experience. So this is a picture of 2 people that are engaging with a program called Sound Self, which is another VR meditation program. And what's interesting about Sound Self is, like, you look at this visualization and you're like, okay. But if you look at the gentleman that's using it, he has a microphone, and actually Sound Self, if you listen, you can hear he's kind of like vocalizing, right? So in Sound Self, you're basically like, you make sounds with your voice, like, ah, and you watch the sound visualization. So it's kind of tapping into like chanting and singing and hymns and that sort of aspect of grounding yourself in the present moment. There's Robin. He's one of I think the founder of Sound Self there talking. There's also VR applications aimed at compassion. So this is Clouds Over Sidra, which remains the only VR experience that's made me cry. It allows you to spend 10 minutes with Sidra, who's a young girl living in a Syrian refugee camp, and you get a sense of what her life is like. And Clouds Over Sidra was set up at installations and led to a massive increase in donations to the relevant charity that was putting it on. So really amazing, the power of VR. There's also VR training. Axon is aiming to actually use the empathy feature of VR, where you can get a view out of someone else's perspective, to help police officers understand the life experience of people who are dealing with PTSD or schizophrenia or autism. And the idea is to help them be more understanding and relating to those who are suffering. This is called the Death Incubator, which is a virtual reality platform that exposes people to, it starts in the grave and moves you out into a kind of atmospheric perspective to give you a sort of education couched within an intervention, a therapeutic intervention, around normalizing death and coming to terms with some of those realities which have been shown to have very positive impacts on mental health. There's also examples in the social media space, like Daily Aloha, which is like a quick positive kick to your day. Apps like Talk Life and Together All, which are social media platforms where you can share about your mental health challenges. Warm Space, which is a platform that pairs you up one-on-one with a kind of guided connection with a friend or stranger, where you can have a kind of like compassionate experience with someone else, as opposed to just a, video call. This is Kialo, which exposes different perspectives on controversial topics to help you feel compassion and understand how the people on the other side of a debate might feel. There's a whole bunch of apps that I'm going to kind of lightning through in self-tracking and limiting. So your phone, if you have an Apple or Android phone, has wellness features where you can track your use, and sometimes it's kind of mind-bending to see just how much you pull your phone out. There's also Stay Focused, which allows you to track your use of certain websites. Freedom is another app like that. And so is Opal, which allows you to sort of time your activities and try to manage how much time you're spending on working on yourself. I want to get into the gaming side as well. So this is a game called Journey, which is just an absolutely beautiful work of art. And I highly recommend, even if you're not a gamer, and especially if you're skeptical of games, because maybe you have a kid who's addicted to shooting people on video games, so you think all video games must be bad, to try Journey, because it's a game designed with principles of mindfulness and awareness at heart. This is a game called Senua's Sacrifice, which researchers consulted on to help give you an experience empathizing with someone who hears voices. And it's a really powerful story, but you experientially play as this character Senua, and you get a sense of what it's like to hear voices, and it can be a really powerful empathy building tool. This is #selfcare, which you can get on the App Store. Creates a kind of space for you to just express yourself. It's a very nice breath of fresh air compared to a lot of apps out there that are constantly driving you and pinging you and that sort of thing. This is I Thrive. So I know I'm going through a lot here. We're almost done. This is I Thrive, which is an academic program that uses existing video games and couches them into educational programs to teach SEL and those kind of like emotional intelligence type curriculum. Endeavor RX is the world's first FDA-approved ADHD treatment that's actually a video game and not a piece of medication, coming out of Akili Interactive. So there's a lot of really cool technologies out there. I really wanted to encourage you to try them out and to shift your perspective on what technology can be in terms of happiness. This is a picture of me meditating on a rock. And I just wanted to end by saying there's 3 things I'm doing in this picture. The first thing I'm doing is tapping into thousands of years of our human tradition across all cultures and sectors of sort of mysticism and contemplative practice as a way to find purpose and insight and self-understanding to be happy, right? The second thing I'm doing is a clinically validated intervention that's showing to have very positive impacts on our mental and physical health, which is helping me be happy. And my contention is the third thing that I'm doing is actually a subversive activist act. In our society, in our attention economy, where things are coming at us from all angles and are trying to command our attention and influence us to buy things and vote a certain way and see ads and click on things, to sit back and do nothing and learn how to pay attention to your breath and strengthen the muscle of choosing what you want to pay attention to has become an activist stance in modern society. And technology isn't the problem. As I hope I've convinced you, there's a lot of attention activist technologies out there that actually might help us in this work and might help us be happier. So I hope this was helpful. Again, my name is Jay. Please don't hesitate to reach out if I can answer any questions, if I can help you in any way, or just, send you the link to some of these technologies. Take care. Have a lovely, lovely day. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. And thank you to the World Happiness Fest and Transformative Technology for this opportunity.